A Chinese Type 093 nuclear submarine stalks a U.S. Virginia-class attack submarine in the South China Sea. What unfolds over the next 12 hours becomes the most intense underwater battle since the Cold War. October 14, 2025. 280 feet below the surface of the South China Sea, the USS Mississippi, a Virginia-class attack submarine worth $3.2 billion, glided silently through the darkness. Her mission was straightforward. Conduct intelligence gathering near the Spratly Islands, monitor Chinese naval activity, and remain undetected. With 135 crew members sealed inside her titanium and steel hull, the Mississippi represented the cutting edge of American undersea warfare. Her AN/BQQ-10 sonar system could detect a hostile submarine at ranges exceeding 100 miles. Her Mark 48 torpedoes could destroy any target at depths down to 3,000 feet. And her nuclear reactor gave her unlimited underwater endurance. She was designed to be invisible, untouchable, and lethal. But 40 miles to the northwest, another predator was hunting. The planned Changzheng 15, a Type 093 Shang-class nuclear attack submarine, had been tracking unusual acoustic signatures for 3 hours. Her captain, a veteran of 20 years in the People's Liberation Army Navy, suspected an American submarine was operating in waters China considered its own. The Changzheng 15, worth an estimated $900 million, carried 38 crew members and 6 U-6 wire-guided torpedoes. She was quieter than earlier Chinese submarines, but still noisier than her American counterpart. Her sonar systems, while improving, lagged behind U.S. technology by at least a decade. On paper, she was outmatched. But her captain had orders. Find the American submarine, shadow it, and if the opportunity arose, demonstrate the Chinese territorial claims would be enforced with steel. At 8:22 a.m., the game of cat and mouse became something far more dangerous. The USS Mississippi's sonar operator detected a faint contact bearing 310 degrees, range estimated at 38 miles. The acoustic signature matched a Type 093 submarine. The captain was informed immediately. In the control room, red lighting preserved night vision as officers studied sonar displays. The contact was moving slowly, possibly conducting a search pattern. Standard procedure dictated caution. Maintain silence. Evade if necessary. Do not provoke. But at 8:35 a.m., the Chinese submarine altered course. It was now heading directly toward the Mississippi's position. Coincidence or detection? The American captain couldn't know. What he did know was that 2 nuclear submarines, each capable of sinking the other, were now on a collision course in one of the world's most contested waterways. What would you do if you detected an enemy submarine closing on your position? Type A, if you'd go deeper and slower to hide. Type B, if you'd maneuver aggressively to gain advantage. Let's see what the tactical community thinks. At 8:47 a.m., the USS Mississippi made her move. The captain ordered a descent to 400 feet and a speed reduction to 5 knots. At this depth and speed, the Virginia-class submarine was nearly silent. Her pump-jet propulsion system, far quieter than traditional propellers, produced minimal noise. Her anechoic coating absorbed active sonar pulses. She became a ghost. The Chinese submarine, still relying on passive sonar, lost contact. The Changzheng 15's captain ordered an active sonar ping, a decision that would prove costly. Active sonar works by emitting a powerful sound pulse and listening for echoes. It reveals targets, but it also reveals the searcher. At 8:52 a.m., the pulse radiated through the water, a deep metallic tone that traveled for miles. The USS Mississippi's sonar operators heard it clearly. They now knew the exact bearing, range, and depth of the Chinese submarine. The Changzheng 15 had announced her presence to hunt for an enemy she couldn't find. The Americans smiled grimly. The hunt had just reversed. The Mississippi's captain ordered a course change, positioning his submarine behind and below the Chinese contact. This was the submariner's ideal position, the baffles, an acoustic blind spot directly behind a submarine where its own noise masks incoming threats. At 9:10 a.m., the Mississippi was 4,000 yards behind the Changzheng 15, tracking her every move. The Chinese crew had no idea they were being followed. For the next hour, the Mississippi shadowed her target, gathering intelligence on propeller noise, reactor signatures, and maneuvering characteristics. Every sound, every vibration, was recorded and transmitted via satellite to U.S. naval intelligence. This data would help American submarines detect and track Type 093s for years to come. But at 10:15 a.m., the situation escalated. The Changzheng 15, frustrated by her inability to relocate the American submarine, began deploying sonobuoys, small acoustic sensors dropped from a towed array. These devices, scattered across a wide area, created a passive listening network. It was an intelligent tactic, one that forced the Mississippi to maneuver carefully to avoid detection. But it also revealed Chinese tactics and technology, information the Americans were eager to collect. At 10:42 a.m., one of the sonobuoys detected the Mississippi's faint acoustic signature. The Chinese submarine immediately altered course, closing the distance at 15 knots. The Mississippi's sonar operator reported the contact accelerating. The captain faced a decision: continue evading or prepare for confrontation. He chose confrontation. At 10:50 a.m., the USS Mississippi opened her torpedo tube doors. The mechanical sound, though muffled, was detectable at close ranges. The Changzheng 15 sonar operator heard it. Panic spread through the Chinese control room. Torpedo tube doors opening meant one thing: the Americans were preparing to fire. The Chinese captain ordered an emergency dive to 600 feet and a hard turn to port, a defensive maneuver designed to break contact and evade torpedoes. But the Mississippi didn't fire. Not yet. The rules of engagement were clear: fire only if fired upon or if American lives were in imminent danger. The torpedo tube doors had been opened as a warning, a signal that escalation would be met with overwhelming force. The message was received. If you're following this tactical chess match, show your support by subscribing now. These deep dives into naval strategy take serious research. At 11:08 a.m., the Changzheng 15 stopped maneuvering and drifted to 650 feet, attempting to hide in a thermocline layer where temperature differences bend sonar waves. It was a desperate move, one that might have worked against an older submarine. But the Mississippi's sonar, enhanced by towed array sensors and advanced signal processing, could see through the thermocline. The Chinese submarine remained painted on the display, a glowing icon that refused to disappear. At 11:30 a.m., the Chinese captain made a fateful decision. He ordered the launch of a U-6 torpedo, not at the American submarine, but into open water, set to run on a search pattern. It was an act of desperation and brinksmanship, a demonstration that China was willing to use lethal force. The torpedo, a 533mm weapon carrying a 300-kilogram warhead, accelerated to 50 knots, its active sonar pinging as it hunted. The USS Mississippi detected the launch immediately. The torpedo was 6,000 yards away, closing fast. The captain ordered evasive maneuvers and launched countermeasures, acoustic decoys designed to lure the torpedo away. The Mississippi dove to 800 feet and turned hard to starboard, her hull groaning under the pressure. The torpedo, confused by the decoys, veered off course and eventually ran out of fuel, sinking harmlessly into the deep. But the line had been crossed. A Chinese submarine had fired a weapon in the presence of an American vessel. Retaliation was authorized. At 11:45 a.m., the USS Mississippi fired a Mark 48 ADCAP torpedo. Unlike the Chinese weapon, this torpedo was not fired blindly. It was programmed with the exact location, depth, and course of the Changzheng 15. The Mark 48, worth $3.8 million, is one of the most lethal underwater weapons ever built. It travels at 55 knots, can dive to 3,000 feet, and carries a 650-pound high-explosive warhead. Its guidance system uses active and passive sonar, wire guidance from the launching submarine, and autonomous target tracking. Once launched, it is nearly impossible to evade. The Chinese submarine heard the launch, Alarms blared. The captain ordered full speed ahead and the release of countermeasures. Acoustic decoys, bubble generators, and evasive maneuvers filled the water with noise and confusion. For 3 agonizing minutes, the Changzheng 15 twisted and turned, diving deeper, then rising suddenly, burning through her battery reserves in a desperate bid to survive. At 11:48 a.m., the Mark 48's active sonar locked on. The weapon, now autonomous, ignored the decoys and zeroed in on the loudest, most consistent acoustic signature, the submarine's reactor. At 11:49 a.m., the torpedo struck the Changzheng 15 amidships just aft of the sail. The 650-pound warhead detonated with a force equivalent to 300 kilograms of TNT, tearing a hole 15 feet wide in the pressure hull. Water, pressurized by the depth, roared into the submarine at catastrophic speed. Compartments flooded in seconds. Electrical systems failed. The reactor automatically scrammed, shutting down to prevent a meltdown. The Changzheng 15, her hull fractured and her systems dead, began sinking toward the ocean floor 9,000 feet below. Emergency blow systems activated, forcing compressed air into ballast tanks in a last-ditch effort to surface. The submarine, trailing oil and debris, clawed upward. At 12:03 p.m., she broke the surface, her conning tower emerging at a steep angle. Crew members scrambled through hatches, abandoning ship as the hull continued to flood. 32 sailors made it out. 6 remained trapped inside, lost in flooded compartments, or killed by the initial explosion. At 12:18 p.m., the Changzheng 15 slipped beneath the waves for the final time. The South China Sea claimed another warship. The USS Mississippi, monitoring from a safe distance, surfaced briefly to transmit a report via satellite. Enemy submarine engaged and neutralized. American vessel undamaged. All crew accounted for. The message reached Pacific Command within minutes. Within an hour, Chinese naval forces were racing to the site, searching for survivors. A rescue helicopter recovered 29 sailors. 3 others died from injuries or exposure before help arrived. The loss of the Changzheng 15, a frontline nuclear submarine, was a strategic disaster for China. The loss of 9 crew members was a human tragedy, and the loss of face, broadcast globally as satellite images showed debris fields and rescue operations, was a propaganda nightmare Beijing couldn't suppress. What tactical mistake cost the Chinese submarine the battle? Was it the active sonar ping, the torpedo launch, or something else? Drop your analysis below. The aftermath was measured in more than lives and steel. China had lost a nuclear attack submarine worth $900 million, along with classified sonar systems, cryptographic equipment, and reactor technology now resting on the ocean floor. American and allied nations immediately deployed deep-sea salvage assets to the area, hoping to recover intelligence before Chinese forces could secure the wreck. The race to retrieve sensitive technology became a secondary battle, one fought with remotely operated vehicles and legal claims over international salvage rights. The USS Mississippi returned to Guam 3 days later. Her crew debriefed extensively on every detail of the engagement. The captain received a commendation. The sonar operators who tracked the Changzheng 15 through the thermocline were recognized for exceptional performance. But there were no celebrations. Submarine warfare is personal. Every sailor knows that steel coffins 800 feet down are where mistakes become tombs. Strategically, the engagement proved what American planners had long believed. Chinese submarines, while improving, remained a generation behind U.S. technology in stealth, sensors, and tactics. The Type 093, designed to challenge American undersea dominance, had been outmaneuvered, outdetected, and outfought. The outcome reinforced U.S. confidence that the Pacific underwater domain remained firmly in American control. For China, the loss forced a painful reassessment. The People's Liberation Army Navy had invested billions in its submarine fleet, believing numerical superiority and home water advantage would offset technological gaps. October 14th shattered that assumption. Quality, not quantity, ruled beneath the waves. Internationally, reactions were subdued but significant. Japan, which views Chinese submarine activity near its waters as a direct threat, quietly increased cooperation with U.S. anti-submarine forces. Australia accelerated plans to acquire nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS partnership, citing the engagement as proof that conventional diesel-electric boats were obsolete in modern undersea warfare. South Korea expanded its own submarine program, prioritizing stealth and sensor upgrades. The message was clear. If China's best couldn't survive against the U.S. Navy, smaller nations needed to invest heavily or risk irrelevance. Beijing's response was predictable. State media blamed the incident on American aggression, claiming the Mississippi had violated Chinese territorial waters and fired without provocation. No evidence was provided. International law, which recognizes the Spratly Islands as disputed territory and the surrounding waters as international, contradicted the Chinese narrative. Independent analysts, reviewing satellite data and acoustic monitoring records, concluded the engagement occurred at least 180 nautical miles from any landmass, well outside any legitimate territorial claim. The Chinese story collapsed under scrutiny, adding diplomatic humiliation to military defeat. For the families of the 9 Chinese sailors lost, the official narrative offered cold comfort. Private grief and public propaganda clashed. Some families received compensation and honors. Others, whose loved ones had made critical errors during the battle, were quietly sidelined. The disparity fueled resentment within the PLA Navy, where junior officers began questioning the competence of senior commanders who had sent a submarine into a battle it couldn't win. Morale issues, already present due to corruption scandals and training deficiencies, worsened. The October 14th engagement didn't just sink a submarine, it damaged the credibility of an entire service branch. American military analysts studied the engagement for lessons applicable to future conflicts. The importance of passive sonar and acoustic stealth was reaffirmed. The value of patient, disciplined tracking over aggressive maneuvering was validated. And the lethality of the Mark 48 torpedo, already legendary, was demonstrated once again in combat conditions. Training curricula at submarine schools were updated to include the engagement as a case study. Young officers learned how patience, superior technology, and adherence to doctrine combined to create decisive victories. The Mississippi's crew became instructors, sharing hard-won knowledge with the next generation. But beneath the tactical success lay a sobering reality. The engagement occurred because a Chinese submarine captain, under pressure to demonstrate resolve, made decisions that escalated routine surveillance into lethal combat. The proximity of 2 nuclear submarines, each armed with weapons capable of sinking the other, created a scenario where miscalculation could trigger catastrophe. October 14th ended with 1 submarine on the bottom and 135 Americans sailing home safely. The next encounter might not be so controlled. The South China Sea, already tense, had become a proving ground where mistakes carried consequences measured in lives and billions of dollars. For submarine commanders on both sides, the lesson was existential. Undersea warfare allows no second chances. A single error in judgment, a moment of hesitation or recklessness, and the ocean becomes a grave. The Changzheng 15's captain survived, but his career ended the moment his submarine surfaced. He had been outmaneuvered, outfought, and forced to abandon his vessel. No amount of propaganda could erase that failure. The Mississippi's captain, meanwhile, returned to a hero's welcome, but carried the weight of having sent 9 men to their deaths. Victory in submarine warfare is never clean. It is survival purchased with precision and paid for by the other crew's mistakes. As analysts debated the strategic implications, one truth emerged. The underwater domain, invisible to satellites and hidden from public view, remains the most lethal battleground in modern naval warfare. A single torpedo can end a billion-dollar investment and 38 lives in seconds. The margin for error is zero. And in the South China Sea, where territorial ambitions clash with international law, those margins grow thinner every day. The USS Mississippi's victory was decisive, but it was also a warning. The next battle might not be between two submarines playing a careful game of detection and evasion. It might be between fleets, where dozens of torpedoes fill the water, and survival becomes a matter of luck as much as skill. The South China Sea remembers October 14, 2025. It remembers a Chinese submarine that underestimated its opponent. It remembers an American crew that executed flawlessly under pressure. And it remembers that beneath the waves, there are no warnings, no retreats, and no mercy. There's only silence, steel, and the cold certainty that whoever strikes first with precision wins. The oceans keep their secrets, but occasionally they teach lessons written in wreckage and loss. Now it's your turn. First, should the USS Mississippi have fired a warning shot before launching the Mark 48, or was the Chinese torpedo launch sufficient justification? Second, what single technological advantage gave the Americans the decisive edge in this engagement? Third, how do you think undersea warfare will evolve as both sides develop quieter submarines and better sensors? Share your answers below. Your engagement drives every analysis we produce. And if you made it through this entire tactical breakdown, you're exactly the kind of strategically minded viewer this channel exists for. Support our work by smashing that like button, subscribing, and hitting notifications so you never miss a deep dive like this. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and remember that the deadliest battles are the ones the world never sees.